and welcome back to the Psychic Side here on the A1R Radio Network, Earth's #1 psychic radio program or network, and Moonstruck TV. I'm John Cappello. I am your host here on the Psychic Side. Thank you very much for joining me today. I had a great weekend at the Psychic Fair at Intelichia in Richardson, Texas. We had a good time. We had a good turnout for our Spirit Gallery. I was very pleased about that. Next week or this week, we're flying down to Houston. And so it's going to be interesting because the weather is terrible in Texas at the moment. We had a flood in our house, and I'm working out of a different location and will be for several weeks. So it's going to be interesting. I am really pleased to be here today. I've been talking to you a lot about developing psychic ability and getting in touch with yourself. So I'm a little bit different than a person that might just read tarot or I want to be careful because I'm not here to criticize or anything like that. But what I'm saying is I'm more of a purist. And we'll take calls here in the future on the program. But at the moment, I want to kind of develop a rapport with you, and I want you to understand where I'm coming from, because my work is not only about doing readings, but it is about teaching you, empowering you, and giving you the ability to tune into your own abilities. And that's why I'd very much like for you to contact me, John at johncappello.com. Even join my new meetup group, which I just started. It's called Beyond Metaphysics. We'll be doing online programs there, and they may be in the evening. That's just now forming. We're just now getting that going. But it's about empowering you. It's about teaching you different things about psychic ability that I've picked up over the 30 years that I've been doing this sort of work. So what we did last week was we talked a little bit about my definitions of what psychic ability was, and how a little bit about the way it works. And this week, I'd like to talk a little bit about how to test yourself or recognize your own gifts, because recognizing your gifts is the essential thing. You have to recognize that you do have the ability. You are able to sense things that are beyond the physical. I hear a lot of different definitions of what metaphysics is, but if you go to the dictionary, you're going to learn that metaphysics is the philosophy that explores existence beyond the physical. So you might say, well, how does that relate to psychic ability? Well, psychic ability validates existence beyond the physical. And the reason why it validates it is because you are able to pick up information that you would not be able to know from just using your physical senses. And what that means is you're picking up information using your extended senses. You're using your senses that work whether you are using your physical senses or not. And last week we identified what I called 3 different senses that people have. You have your physical senses, you have your psychic senses, and then you have your remote psychic senses. And I feel like by segmenting things like this, it brings an understanding to how things work. And we'll be getting into demonstrations of those different abilities as time goes on as well. So I'm wanting to set the stage here for our readings that we're going to be doing with people on the broadcast. And so one of the things that I want to start to work with you about is recognizing your own personal space. And, you know, if you've had someone that just stood really close to you and they weren't invited, it's kind of a violation of that personal space. and you kind of want to, just shirk back a little bit and say, wait a minute, can you just step back a few feet? Um, when that happens, they're getting into your psychic field. And that is, some people will say, and I agree that our psychic field has different layers to it. Well, that really close psychic field that is just about, I guess a foot in front of you, is one that you would definitely feel violated in if someone was there and they weren't invited. Now, if you want to kiss someone or you want to hug someone, you kind of allow them to get into that field, and it's they're welcome there. And when you do that, you're emotionally connecting with someone. You're connecting with their psychic field because you are also being allowed to go into their personal space, and that's a good thing because that's part of bonding and that's part of sharing. It's part of being able to connect with other people because we have to be psychically bonded to other people when we are having a relationship with them. And so when you pick up information from someone, you're doing it using your personal space and extending it to envelop them. You are also being enveloped by their personal space. And then that's when that concept of the rubber band ball starts to get into play. And you are able to pick up information about them that's relevant. And you'll see that happening when we get into our readings, because we will be able to pick up fragments of information, videos, just different things that are come across when we are involved with another person. And if you watch other people do readings, and I want you to, you will see how the mechanics of their psychic abilities work. Now, a lot of times people will use cards, and they'll be very dependent upon cards, and they'll pull a card and they'll say, this card means this, and this card means that, and that's just fine. But I'd like for you to learn how to do that on your own without a card, and because the card has its own meaning, but you may have some feelings or you may have some impressions that aren't exactly what the card says. And so memorizing the cards is one thing, but the card only opens the door for you to use your own ability. And I'd like for you to be able to open that door without a card or without a tool. And you'll find that you're more effective that way. I know that, for instance, when I did the gallery the other night, I would say things to people like, I just feel like there's a nurse, or I feel like you're a nurse. And sure enough, the lady was a nurse because she exuded an energy of nurturing, of healing, of being that scientist, which nurses are, and being that healer that nurses are. So I picked up that she was a nurse, and other people you can pick up or even visualize that they're teachers, and you ought to be able to do that without a card. And of course, I like to work in the dark if possible. If I can work in the pitch black, it's easier actually because there's no distractions of light, and people don't have their body language involved. So a lot of times when I'm working in front of a group, I may even close my eyes. I shouldn't do that, especially if I'm on camera. But working that way makes it easier for me because I can tap into my third eye, and this way you can do that as well. And you may also notice that psychic abilities are nuanced, and we'll get into that too. For instance, we'll get into the 12 different types of clairvoyance that you have. You didn't know you had 12 different types, did you? But we also find that when we are working with our psychic ability, that we use psychic terms all the time. We use terms that are part of our vernacular. We use terms that we don't realize are associated with psychic impressions. Things like, oh, I had a gut feeling. Well, what does that mean? It means that you had a feeling that came from beyond the physical that you could not explain, yet it enveloped your being. You had this sensation that it was very strong. And you validated it because you had that gut feeling. It hit you right there in your solar plexus, and that was something that you had to recognize. Or you had a hunch. A hunch is another psychic impression that you received. Or when people say, "Oh, I had an idea that just dropped in and out of my head or into my head," that's a psychic impression. And because it came from nowhere, it's something that you should recognize as being part of claircognizance. And claircognizance is what I call the genius psychic ability, you see. And then you have people say, "Oh, a little birdie told me," or "I heard it through the grapevine." They may very well have heard it through gossip, or they may very well have heard it through another means. But for me, if you just heard it from a clairvoyant or clairaudient uh, source, source that was beyond the physical, a voice that was beyond the physical, then that's something which is very psychic. So, what's your homework? Your homework, as we get ready to close the show, because this is a quick show, we only have 15 minutes. I would like for you to start writing down things that you felt, things that you may have had a gut feeling about, things that you had a hunch about, things that just flashed in front of your mind. Maybe even write down something about a dream. So we don't have much time today, but I want to leave that with you. And I want you to join me again here on the Psychic Side on the A1R Psychic Radio Network at Moonstruck TV. Visit me on my website at johncappello.com. Like me on my Facebook page. I want to find out if you're really listening. So thank you so much for visiting with me today. It's always fun to be here on the Psychic Radio Network. And I hope to see you next week. So take care. Bye-bye.